The Czech Republic has lost patience with Europe's vaccination program and turned to Russia for its SputnikV coronavirus jab. The country's first deputy prime minister has proposed foregoing EU registration for the vaccine to get its rollout off the ground. RT's Maud Gazdiev reports.
So there's 3 European nations that have green-lighted Sputnik, despite the European Medicines Agency taking its time, really taking its time to approve Sputnik. So these 3 nations have already sidelined the European Union and have said, look, the situation is incredibly desperate. So the Czech Republic, Hungary, and now Slovakia, which has just received its first batch of Sputnik vaccines. There's going to be millions more that are going to be delivered by summer. So the Prime Minister's obviously very happy that he's managed to secure more vaccines for the people with the situation this desperate, especially given that 71% of Slovakians have voiced willingness to get vaccinated with Sputnik once it becomes available of those who want to get vaccinated. Nevertheless, there's now a scandal. There's a scandal because the president of Slovakia has come out. She paid lip service to people's lives, but ultimately she said that vaccination shouldn't be carried out at the expense of political stability.
Of course, saving lives goes beyond any political controversy, but even exceptional actions can be taken in such a way so as not to destroy the ruling coalition, humiliate opponents, or question people's confidence in vaccinations and cause further conflict in society.
It is remarkable coming out in front of your people in the middle of a pandemic and telling them, you know, your health is important, but what is even more important is the stability of the ruling coalition. You know, it just goes to highlight that the deep divisions in Europe, and there are incredibly deep divisions in Europe over the way the pandemic, the vaccination, and the rollout of the vaccines has been handled. It isn't the Russian vaccine that is undermining people's faith in the European Union. It is their handling of this crisis. In Germany, for example, 51% of people asked in a recent poll whether you know, the vaccination has been handled well or badly by the European Union. 51%, more than half of Germans have said it's been shambles, the way the European Union has handled it. So initially, the European Union came out and said, look, let's all do it together. So give up your power. No nation needs to buy vaccines by themselves. We'll handle it all. So we'll get you Pfizer vaccines, Moderna vaccines. And what ultimately happened is they bungled it. First, they were too expensive. Then they were too late because the United States, Britain, snatched up all the vaccines. Look at the statistics. Only 5% of Europeans have been able to get a single jab. That is compared to 14% in the United States already, 30% in the United Kingdom. So Europe is lagging far, far behind, and European nations understand that this is a catastrophe. This is a catastrophe on a huge number of levels, on a political level, on a healthcare level. And ultimately, what has happened is that all these nations have said, look, we're going to do this ourselves. Obviously, the European agencies, the Eurocrats, they have fumbled this, so we'll handle it ourselves. You have Poland running to the Chinese with hands outstretched, begging for vaccine quotas. You have Austria going out and saying that, you know, we're going to now cooperate with Israel to develop second-generation vaccines. Denmark as well, saying that we'll work with Israel on second-generation vaccine to target all the strains and all that. And ultimately, the Austrian Chancellor, so this is a leader of a European nation, coming out and saying they've lost hope in Europe, the way that Europe handles vaccine rollouts.
We must prepare for further mutations and should no longer be dependent solely on the EU in the production of second-generation vaccines.
Look, Brussels understands that what has happened has been a catastrophe. You have high officials of the European Union coming out and saying, we're sorry, apologizing to citizens all over Europe for the way they've handled things, but saying that, you know, it isn't over yet. We can still recover. We'll get you your vaccines. There's no need to run around and make shady deals and, you know, buy up vaccines that were supposed to be received by other European nations. You have a situation where it's a free-for-all now. Nevertheless, the Europeans are sure that they can fix things, and they're now saying that perhaps we'll try to speed up the whole bureaucratic process that has caused all of this and get you emergency approval for vaccines now.
It could be an emergency authorization of vaccines at EU level with shared liability among member states.
Look, the situation is such that it is a free-for-all. Like, you remember in the early days of the pandemic, when countries all over the world, NATO allies, neighbors, bought up supplies from each other. So we're talking about masks, ventilators. We all remember the diplomatic crises that caused. The situation now is remarkably similar. So there is no united front. You know, it's what you can get your hands on, you get your hands on. And this is a situation that obviously isn't optimal for Europe in these difficult times, especially economically, politically, all over the world. Nevertheless, European bureaucrats aren't giving up hope. They believe that they can still fix things. The problem is, of course, that member states don't believe that they can.